The building across the street is folding in on itself like wet paper, and I am walking toward it at a completely normal pace. People are screaming in both directions. A woman drops her groceries and just leaves them there, oranges rolling into the gutter. Somewhere behind me, a man is on his knees, hands pressed to his ears, because the sound a fracture makes when it opens wrong isn't really a sound at all. It's a pressure, a wrongness that gets into your teeth. 2 senior hunters went in 11 minutes ago. Neither of them has come back out. The fracture itself sits low over the collapsed building, like a bruise pressed into the sky, a ragged seam of violet light no wider than a doorway, humming at a pitch just below hearing. Underneath it, the street is a museum of the last 11 minutes, an overturned supply cart, a hunter's cracked comm unit still blinking uselessly in the gutter, a single boot with no owner in sight. Whatever's still alive in there hasn't announced itself yet, and that silence is worse than screaming would be. I check my bootlaces. They're fine. I didn't need to check them. I just needed a reason to slow my hands down, because the part of me that used to be somebody else wants to sprint in there at a speed that would make several hundred people ask questions I can't answer. Kaldris! Doran's voice cracks somewhere behind me, half fear, half fury. That thing is not bronze classified. That thing ate the classification. Get back here. I don't get back there. I've been called a lot of things in 2 lifetimes. Coward was never one of them, and I'd like to keep it that way, even in a life where nobody's supposed to know I have a first one to compare it to. The building's east wall comes apart in a spray of brick and glass, and something steps out of it that the Accord's little classification chart would call, at best, a rough guess. 6 legs, too many joints, a head that's mostly mouth, iron tier, easily, maybe pushing steel. Somebody filed this fracture as bronze this morning, and somebody is going to have a very bad afternoon in a review meeting, assuming anyone survives to write it. I step over a fallen street sign and go in anyway. The 2 senior hunters are the first thing I see once I'm past the wall. Both iron rank, both alive, which already puts them ahead of where I expected. One's dragging himself backward through broken glass with a leg that isn't going to hold weight for weeks. The other's flat on her back, shield arm shattered, staring up at the thing looming over her with the specific, glassy calm of someone who has already made peace with not getting up again. I don't have time to be gentle about this. I put myself between the Hollowkin and her spine, take the first strike on the flat of my blade instead of my body, and the impact still knocks something loose in my shoulder that's going to ache for days. Good. Pain like that is honest. It's the kind a bronze rank is supposed to feel. Get her out, I tell the crawling hunter, and he does, hooking an arm under his partner's shoulders and hauling her clear, while I buy the 3 seconds that costs. That's when I hear Lyra scream. She's pinned under a support beam that shouldn't have fallen and definitely shouldn't still be smoking. One arm free, the other jammed at an angle I don't love. Doran's dragging her by the collar with the kind of raw panic that gets people killed faster than monsters do. And the 6-legged thing, done toying with the iron ranks, hungry for something that still fights back, is turning toward both of them with the slow, deliberate patience of something that has already decided how this ends. It has decided wrong. Move, I say, and my voice comes out flatter than I mean it to. Doran doesn't argue. He's learned not to, mostly because the one time he did, I saved his life a half-second later, and he's never quite gotten over the coincidence. There's a version of me, an old version, a version whose name I don't say out loud anymore, who would end this creature in the time it takes to blink. Cut it root to tip, no theatrics, moving on before the dust settles. That version of me is dead. I made very sure of that. What's left of him has to do this the slow way, the believable way. I close the distance faster than a bronze rank should, and if anyone's counting steps later, and someone always is, I'll have to explain that as adrenaline. I get inside the reach of that too wide mouth and put a knife exactly where the tendon meets the joint, on its second nearest leg, and it screams in a register that makes the windows behind me hairline crack. It goes down hard on that side. Not dead. Off balance. That's the trick of it. You don't need to be a legend to win a fight. You just need to be smarter than the thing trying to eat you, and I have had a very long time to get good at being smarter than things that want to eat me. It doesn't stay down. 4 of its remaining legs drive it sideways, in a lunge that's faster than anything with that much mass should manage, mouth snapping shut a hand's width from where my ribs were a half-second earlier. I feel the wind of it. I don't feel anything else. Either that's good instincts, or it's the kind of luck that runs out eventually, and I'd rather not find out which today. Kaldris! Left! Doran shouts, and I'm already moving before the word finishes, rolling under the next strike instead of meeting it, coming up inside the creature's guard, where it's too many joints buy it nothing. Doran gets Lyra clear in the gap that buys. I finish it with 2 more cuts, one to the exposed underside where the plating hasn't finished growing in, one clean through whatever passes for a spine, on something this wrong. That look, to anyone watching, like a lucky bronze hunter having the best day of his life. Nobody watching sees the sliver of gold that flickers under my skin for exactly 1/3 of a second before I clamp it back down where it belongs. Nobody except, maybe, the thing that's dying in front of me. Because right before the light goes out of that too wide mouth, it says something. Not a screech, not a death rattle, a word. In a language this world has never had a reason to invent. In a voice that isn't its own. I know that word. I built half my old life around not hearing it again. The creature doesn't leave a corpse so much as it leaves an argument between physics and bad memories. It comes apart into fine gray ash that should just settle on the rubble like every other holokin I've ever put down. Instead, for exactly 2 heartbeats, the ash holds a shape. Lines. Angles. A symbol I haven't seen since a life I don't get to have anymore. Hanging in the air over a collapsed street in a city that has never once heard the words First Circle or Sunwarden. And then it's gone. Scattered by a gust of wind that feels far too convenient to be weather. Did you? Doran staring at the empty space where the shape was. Kaldris, did you see that? See what? I say, and I hate how easy the lie comes. I hate more that Lyra, cradling her bad arm against her chest, is looking at me instead of at the ash. Not suspicious, not yet, just noticing, filing something away for later, the way people do right before the pieces start fitting together on their own. The symbol itself is still burning behind my eyes, even though it's long gone from the air. 4 interlocking lines around a broken circle, the kind of mark that used to sit stitched into banners and branded into gates on the other side of a life I don't talk about. It shouldn't exist here. It shouldn't exist anywhere anymore. I watched that whole language die with everything else. Somebody else pulling it out of a dead holokin's ashes means somebody else remembers it too, and there is exactly 1 person left alive who I know for a fact still would. I bury the thought before it finishes forming. That's a reflex I already paid for once. Somewhere far behind me, an old world burned because somebody let their guard down for 2 seconds. I am not going to be the reason a new one does the same. The walk back to processing cuts through the outer district's market row, stalls just starting to reopen now that the sirens have gone quiet. Vendors sweeping broken glass off their counters like this happens every other week. Because, honestly, it does. Duskmere doesn't stop for a fracture unless the fracture makes it stop. The city's built its whole rhythm around the holes in reality that keep opening near it. The Bloomtide calendar posted outside every district hall. The reinforced shutters on ground floor windows. Children who learn the 7 accord ranks before they learn their multiplication tables. Doran's still buzzing off the adrenaline, recounting the fight to absolutely nobody in particular, with increasingly generous embellishments. And then it had, 6 legs? Felt like 12. Felt like it grew a couple mid-fight just to be rude. It had 6, Lyra says. You're bad at this. I'm narrating. There's a difference. He glances at me. You're going to back me up on the 12 legs thing, right? I counted 6 too. Unbelievable. Both of you, against me, on legs. It's easy this. Easy in a way that still catches me off guard some days. The fact that I get to have it at all. Ordinary bickering. Ordinary friends who have no idea what they're bickering next to. In my old life, there wasn't room for easy. There was the war, the people fighting it with me, and everything we did to each other in the name of winning it. I didn't get friends who worried about leg counts. I got comrades who worried about whether I'd still be alive by morning. And mostly, by the end, they were right too. Duskmere doesn't know any of that. Duskmere just sees a bronze rank hunter walking home through a market that's slowly putting itself back together, ducking under a vendor's awning that's still dripping from an earlier cleanup, nodding at an old woman who sells dried herbs and always slips Doran an extra bundle for free. None of them look at me twice. That's the whole point of 3 years of careful, exhausting effort, and most days it's worth every bit of it. You're doing the thing again, Lyra says, quieter, falling into step beside me, while Doran forges ahead trying to convince a fruit vendor that 8 legs is a completely reasonable compromise. What thing? The thing where you go somewhere else in your head for a second. She's not looking at me when she says it, which somehow makes it land harder. You do it a lot, more than you probably know. Just tired, I say, which isn't even really a lie, just an incomplete one. Sure, she doesn't push. She never pushes, not really, not yet, just leaves the door open a crack every time, the way you'd leave a light on for somebody you're not sure is lost. The Accord Processing Center smells like antiseptic and burnt ozone, more or less the smell of every government building put up next to a hole in reality. Word of the misclassified fracture has already beaten us here. 2 iron ranks pull me aside near the intake desk just to shake my hand. A cluster of junior hunters by the vending machines keeps glancing over and dropping their voices every time I look their way, exhausting in its own specific way. I hear the phrase phantom bronze twice before I even sit down, and I hate how well it fits. I'm on my 3rd cup of terrible coffee, waiting for the intake officer, when the doors at the end of the hall open, with the specific, unhurried authority of somebody who has never once had to wait for anything in his life. Castellan Thren is younger than I expected the first time I met him, which was 3 months ago, and I've never quite adjusted to it. RM rank at 29. Sharp uniform, sharper eyes. The kind of posture that makes junior hunters straighten up without being told to. He's holding a data slate like it personally offended him. Bronze classified, he says, not looking up. 2 senior iron hunters incapacitated. 1 bronze rank walks out with a scratch. He finally lifts his eyes to me. Explain the math. I got lucky, I say. You got lucky twice in the last 4 months, Kaldris. At some point, that stops being luck and starts being a pattern I have to write a report about. Then write a lucky report. Doran laughs before he can stop himself, then goes very still when Thren's eyes cut sideways toward him. Thren doesn't smile. I've never seen him smile. I get the sense he considers it a structural weakness, like a crack in a load-bearing wall. The classification error will be investigated, he says, closing the slate with a snap, along with everything else about this incident. His gaze holds on me a half-second longer than professional interest requires. Everything, Kaldris. Looking forward to reading the report, I say, and sign the incident form. He slides across the counter, without letting myself hesitate over the line marked Engagement Severity, Bronze Appropriate. It's a lie in ink, filed and stamped, and Accord law is very specific about what happens to hunters caught engaging above their registered threshold. I've made a career out of not getting caught. Severity Statute 9. Suspension, mandatory review, full deregistration for repeat offenses. I could recite the clauses from memory, and I sign my name under a number I know is wrong anyway. He walks away before I can decide whether that last look was a threat or just Thren being Thren. With him, it's usually hard to tell the difference. Don't mind him, says a voice like gravel wrapped in silk, and I turn to find a woman leaning in the doorway who I have absolutely no business recognizing on sight, and yet do. Because everyone in this city knows Mirel Kest's face, the way people used to know the faces on old war medals. Zenith rank. Officially retired, which in Accord terms means she shows up whenever she feels like it, and nobody has the nerve to stop her. She's got silver threading through dark hair pulled back tight, forearms scarred in patterns that tell entire histories, and an expression right now that's somewhere between amused and evaluating. Thren thinks rules are load-bearing, she says. Some of us think they're guidelines with better lawyers. She looks me over, unhurried, checking me for a hairline crack. You're the bronze who dropped an iron tier Holokin solo. I had help, I say, nodding at Lyra, who's getting her arms set by a medic 10 feet away and very obviously still listening. Sure you did. Mirel's mouth curves. You've got steel rank instincts wearing a bronze rank badge, kid. That's either the best kept secret in Duskmere, or the worst kept one. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe I'm just motivated. Motivation doesn't teach you where to put a knife on a six-legged hollowkin nobody's ever cataloged before. She tilts her head, studying me like a puzzle with one piece that doesn't belong to the box it came in. I've trained a lot of hunters in a very long career, Kaldris. Most of them move like they're thinking. You move like you're remembering. The word lands somewhere it shouldn't be able to reach, and I make sure absolutely nothing on my face admits it. Careful, I say instead, aiming for light. Keep talking like that, and people will think you're recruiting me. Maybe I am. She says it easily, like it costs her nothing. But there's something underneath it that isn't a joke at all. I don't do that for just anyone. I'm flattered. I'm also fine where I am. Nobody with instincts like yours is fine where they are, she says, not unkindly. More like she's stating a fact she's tired of watching people ignore. You get that look sometimes from people who've spent decades reading hunters, the way most people read weather. She has it now, studying me like she's already 3 steps into a conclusion she hasn't said out loud yet. You're playing small, Kaldris. I don't know why yet, but I will eventually, I always do. And when I figure it out, my offer's still going to be standing. Private sessions. No accord paperwork. No rank review. Just training. She taps 2 fingers against her own temple. Some things you can't get from a squad drill. I'll think about it. Maybe. She pushes off the doorframe, unbothered, already walking away. Watch yourself, Kaldris. Potential like yours doesn't stay quiet forever. Not in this city. I watch her go and try very hard not to think about how right she is, in ways she couldn't possibly guess. Doran, for his part, is currently losing an argument with a supply clerk at the far counter. Loud enough that half the waiting room's watching. Several off-duty hunters already placing quiet side bets on who wins. I'm not asking for new gear, he's saying. I'm asking for gear that fits a person who is not 11 years old. Requisitions based on registered rank, sir. And bronze allotment is standard issue regardless of. I nearly got eaten. That's noted in the incident report, sir. But it doesn't change the allotment. We leave him to it. The clerk has the face of a man who has won this exact argument 400 times, and fully intends to win it again. So, Lyra says, flexing her newly splinted arm with the wince of someone who is absolutely still going to use it too soon. You gonna tell me what that ash thing was doing? Or am I filing this under Ezra Kaldris does something inexplicable? Part 46. It's part 47, actually. You missed one in Sector 9. I did not miss anything in Sector 9. I was there. You. She stops, laughs despite herself, shakes her head. You're impossible. I've been told. We end up on the low wall outside processing, and for a second it's just quiet, in the good way. The kind of quiet you only get with someone who has saved your life and been saved by it in turn. That does something to people ordinary friendship never quite manages. The clerk wins. Doran stalks over eventually, clutching a replacement gauntlet 2 sizes too small. They gave me the training model, he announces, betrayed, holding it up like evidence at a trial. They're issuing me gear for cadets. Maybe Requisition heard about the bootlace incident, I say. There was no bootlace incident. There's about to be one, if you keep waving that thing around. Lyra laughs for the first time since the beam came down, sharp and real, and for a second the whole plaza and the ash and the word I'm not thinking about all recede a little. Doran drops onto the wall between us, still scowling at the gauntlet, already halfway to forgetting he was ever angry about it. Can I ask you something? She says, and her voice changes register, drops half a step. That report today, the one with the misclassified fracture. She's looking at her hands, not at me. My brother's last mission got misclassified too. Nobody ever fixed the record. Officially it says equipment failure. And unofficially? Unofficially, his last transmission said something about a whisper, something that wasn't Holokin. She shrugs, like the motion costs her something. Command called it stress, said the isolation gets to people right before a fracture collapses on them. I called it a lead nobody followed up on. Doesn't matter now, I guess. Doran's gone quiet at that, watching his boots instead of either of us. He's heard this before, I realize. Probably more than once, and has never once found the right thing to say to it either. He wasn't the type to panic, Lyra adds, quieter now. Everyone says that about their dead. I know how it sounds. But I knew him. He didn't scare easy, and he didn't imagine things. She looks up at me, and there's something in her expression that isn't grief exactly. It's closer to a question she's been carrying around for years, waiting for someone who might actually take it seriously. You believe me? I don't say anything for a second, because there's a version of comfort that's honest, and a version that's just easier. And right now, I genuinely don't know which one to reach for. It matters, I say finally, even if nobody followed it. She looks at me like she's surprised I meant it. I am too, a little. Sleep doesn't come easy most nights, and tonight is worse than most, because that word is still sitting in my chest like a swallowed coal. I don't dream about my old life so much as I get ambushed by it. No warning, no narrative logic, just a flash of heat that isn't real heat. A sky the wrong color, the specific weight of armor I haven't worn in what feels like forever, and was, technically, only a handful of years ago depending on how you count dying. There's a hand on my shoulder in the dark of that not quite dream. I don't see whose. I never do. Just the grip, familiar in a way that used to mean safety and now means something closer to grief. There's a voice too, sometimes, though tonight it doesn't quite form into words. Just the shape of a sentence I've spent years refusing to finish remembering. Spoken by someone I trusted with everything right up until the moment that trust got me killed. I don't let it land. I've gotten good at not letting it land. Then it's gone, and I'm staring at my own ceiling, in my own rented room, in a city that doesn't know my real name, breathing like I've run somewhere. The iron pendant around my neck is warm against my collarbone. It's not supposed to be warm. It's not supposed to do anything at all. It's just a plain, ugly little thing I've worn so long I forget it's there. Until nights like this, when it hums so faintly I could almost convince myself I imagined it. I don't take it off. I've tried. Once. Years ago. It didn't go well. I don't like remembering how it didn't go well. I don't go back to sleep. I sit on the floor of my apartment in the dark, palms flat against the boards, and do the thing I do most nights when the dream leaves me too rattled to trust myself in front of other people the next morning. Suppression isn't like flexing a muscle. It's closer to holding a door shut against something on the other side that wants out badly enough to keep testing the hinges. I pull the aurelic flame down and in, fold it smaller than it wants to be, and hold it there until my arms shake and there's a thin sheen of sweat on my collarbone despite the cold. It's not a technique the Accord has a name for. As far as the Accord knows, nobody has ever needed one. By the time I'm done, my hands are trembling, and the pendant against my chest has gone from warm to merely present again. That's as close to peace as it gets some nights. I climb back into bed knowing I'll be doing this again tomorrow, and the night after that, for as long as it takes to make sure nobody in this city ever has a reason to look at me twice. I lie there until the last of the hum fades, and tell myself, the way I do most nights, that tomorrow will be a normal, boring, forgettable day. I have never once been right about that. The citywide announcement hits every public terminal in Duskmere before I've even finished my coffee. Mandatory resonance recalibration. All registered hunters. Effective immediately, following irregularities detected in recent data. Irregularities. Doran reads off the board outside the training hall, chewing his lip. That's a chord for somebody screwed up the numbers, and now we all have to pay for it, right? Usually, I say, and try very hard to keep my voice as bored as everyone else's. Around us, the training hall's gone from its usual low hum to something closer to a beehive somebody kicked. A pair of iron rank hunters near the far wall are already arguing about whether recalibration counts toward their next promotion review. A younger hunter I don't recognize looks genuinely pale, muttering to a friend about a testing headache he's had for weeks that he never reported, because reporting it would mean admitting his resonance has been drifting since his last checkup. Everybody's got a reason to be nervous about a machine reading them honestly. Mine's just bigger than most, because I know exactly whose numbers they're talking about. Recalibration means standing in front of a resonance meter and having it read your output raw, unfiltered. No room to fudge the margins. I fudged them on my very first test, 3 years ago, in a room much like this one. Breath held, heartbeat spiked. doing violence to my own signal, until the number that came out read bronze, instead of whatever obscene truth it should have shown. It's been quietly eating at me ever since. It worked then. Barely. It has to work again. The training yard's already half empty by the time our squad gets there for the afternoon session. And the reason why is standing in the middle of it getting cited in front of everyone by a face I recognize immediately. Castellan Thren reads the citation off his data slate in the same flat, unhurried voice he used on me that morning, and somehow that's worse than if he'd been shouting. Iron Rank Corvin Tass, you are cited for engagement above registered threshold during yesterday's Sector 4 incident, in violation of Accord Severity Statute 9. Sentencing review scheduled for. I saved 4 people, Corvin says, and I recognize the specific, helpless anger in his voice. Because it's an argument I've had with myself 100 times, and never once won against the law as written. The fracture was rated for bronze response. It wasn't bronze. What was I supposed to do? Let them die inside the rating? You were supposed to call for reinforcement within your threshold and hold position, Thren says, unmoved. And for one uncomfortable second, his eyes lift off the slate and find me across the yard, like he's delivering the second half of that sentence to an audience of one. The law exists because unregistered strength in the field is exactly how containment failures happen. Your intentions aren't in dispute, Hunter. Your compliance is. Corvin looks at the yard. Not at Thren, at us. At 40 hunters standing very still and saying nothing. And I watch him understand in real time that not one of us is going to open our mouth for him. Right, he says. That's all. He hands over his registration card without being asked, which somehow lands worse than if they'd taken it off him. Doran mutters something under his breath that gets him an elbow from Lyra. Nobody in the yard says anything out loud, but I can feel the mood of it. That particular bitter quiet of people watching someone get punished for the same instinct that would get them called a hero on a better day, in a system with better math. Thren doesn't get all the way to the gate before he stops, turns, and crosses the yard toward me instead, unhurried, deliberate, the kind of walk that makes conversations around him die out before he's even close enough to hear them. Kaldris, he says, and there's nothing friendly in it. A word? I step a few paces clear of the others. Whatever he wants, I'd rather Lyra and Doran not be standing close enough to hear it. You saw that, he says, nodding back toward the gate Corvin just disappeared through. That's not a threat. That's just what happens, every time, without exception, to a hunter who decides the rating on a fracture doesn't apply to them. His eyes are steady, unreadable. I'd hate to write that citation twice in 1 week. Understood, I say, keeping my voice as flat as his. Would you? He holds my gaze a beat longer than comfortable, then turns and walks off without waiting for anything else, leaving me standing there with my pulse a little too high for a conversation that technically didn't threaten anything at all. They'll suspend his registration for a season, maybe 2, Lyra says under her breath once he's out of earshot, apparently having watched the whole exchange without either of us noticing. Doesn't matter that he was right. Doesn't matter that it worked. Doesn't it? Doran asks. Not to the Accord. She glances sideways at me, and something in the look makes my collar feel a size too small. Funny though, you'd think a system built to catch dangerous unregistered strength would be a little more interested in why it keeps happening instead of just punishing it after the fact. She shakes her head, more tired than bitter now. Good thing you always stay so carefully inside your rating, huh, Kaldris? I like rules, I say. Rules are relaxing. You've broken curfew 4 times this month. Different kind of rule. She doesn't push it further, but I catch her adding it to the list. Same as the ash. Same as everything else that doesn't quite add up about me. I add my own note to the growing pile of things I'm going to have to answer for eventually. Whatever happens tonight, whatever the recalibration turns up, I cannot afford a second Corvin Tass standing in this yard with my name on the slate instead of his. We change out of training gear in the squad locker room afterward. The mood's still a little sour from watching Corvin get led away. Doran breaks the silence first, because Doran always breaks the silence first. You know the next bloom tide's in 11 days, right? He says, toweling off his neck. Sector charts already have 3 low-severity fractures flagged for early opening. Recalibration timing's not exactly subtle. They want everyone's numbers locked before the surge hits, Lyra says, pulling her splint back into place over her sleeve. Makes sense. Bloom tides always spike incident rates. Command doesn't want unregistered strength floating around when the Holokins start getting nastier. Unregistered strength, Doran repeats, snorting. Like Corvin. Like whoever that phantom bronze everyone's whispering about is. Wonder who that could be, Lyra says, deadpan, not looking at either of us. No idea, I say. Sounds exhausting. Sounds like somebody's going to have a very bad 11 days, she says. And there's something underneath the joke that isn't entirely a joke. Gone again, before I can decide how worried to be about it. The line outside the testing chamber stretches halfway down the corridor, hunters shuffling forward in 20-minute intervals, while a bored clerk calls names off a list. Doran's 3 ahead of me, practicing what looks like a breathing exercise someone told him would help. I don't have the heart to tell him it won't do anything to the reading either way. You nervous? He asks, glancing back. Should I be? I don't know, man. You've got that face you get. He squints at me. The one right before you do something insane, and don't tell anyone about it until after. I don't have a face. You have exactly one face, Kaldris, and it's doing the thing right now. The clerk calls his name before I have to figure out how to answer that. Closest thing to good luck I've had all week. The testing chamber is smaller than I remember. All cold light and humming machinery. And the resonance meter itself sits in the center like an altar nobody quite worships, but everybody fears. I step onto the platform. The technician runs the calibration sequence, bored, half watching a second screen. I do the thing I've trained myself to do without looking like I'm doing anything at all. Pull inward, smother, choke the signal down to something small and manageable and believable. Like holding your breath underwater and hoping nobody notices you've stopped. It costs more than it used to. It always does. There's a thin line of pressure behind my eyes, gone almost as fast as it comes, and the number on the display settles exactly where I need it to. Bronze. Stable. Unremarkable. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, and step off the platform. And that's when I notice Thren, standing at the observation window, not watching the screen. Watching me. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. There's a particular kind of stillness people get when they've just seen something their instincts flag, and their evidence hasn't caught up to yet. And Castellan Thren is wearing that stillness like a second uniform. Behind the glass, I catch him glance down at his data slate, then back up at the display where my reading still sits, then back at me one more time, comparing something, cross-referencing something, double-checking a number he already knows is wrong and can't yet prove. I nod at him on my way out, casual as I can manage. He doesn't nod back. I tell myself it's nothing. I tell myself a lot of things. Lyra corners me in the sparring ring that afternoon, ostensibly for drill practice, actually for something closer to an interrogation with better footwork. She comes in fast with her good arm, testing, and I let her land 2 hits I could have avoided just to keep the shape of the fight honest. You're pulling your strikes, she says, circling. You always pull your strikes against me. I've never once seen you actually try. Maybe I like you too much to hit you properly. Or maybe, she says, closing the distance and nearly getting a 3rd hit in before I finally slip it. You're worried what happens if you don't have to hold back. I don't answer that one right away, and the pause probably says more than any answer would. She backs off half a step, reading my face the way she reads everything, patient and a little too perceptive for my comfort. I'm not trying to catch you at anything, she says, quieter now, dropping the drill stance entirely. I've watched people hide things before, Kaldris. My brother hid things. Mostly because he thought telling the truth would scare people off, or get him pulled from active duty, or both. She shrugs. But it's not as light as she wants it to look. It didn't save him. Hiding never saves anybody. It just means nobody's ready when it finally catches up. Noted, I say. A coward's answer, and I know it. She lets it go, again like she always does, letting it sit instead of forcing it. And we finish the drill in something that isn't quite comfortable silence, but isn't hostile either. By the time we're done, my knuckles are raw, and my collarbones aching where the pendant sits. And I tell myself that's just from sparring. The evening's quiet enough that I almost believe one of them. I eat dinner standing up at a noodle stall 2 streets from my apartment, half listening to the vendor complain about supply shortages from the last bloom tide. And for 20 whole minutes, nothing in the world asks anything of me at all. It's the kind of ordinary I moved to Duskmere for. It's the kind of ordinary I know better than to trust. Overhead, the sky's doing the thing it does most evenings this close to a bloom tide. A faint shimmer along the horizon, where the ambient pressure from a dozen minor fractures bleeds together into something almost pretty, if you don't know what it means. Most people in the market don't. They call it the evening glow, and go about their business, buying the last of the day's produce, calling kids in from the street, utterly unbothered by a phenomenon that would have had every ward in my old world on lockdown by now. I finish my noodles, pay the vendor, and I'm halfway back to my apartment when the glow on the horizon stops being faint. The sun's barely down when the sky over the Accord Vault District turns the wrong color. Not sunset red, not storm gray, but a bruised, pulsing violet that every hunter in this city has been trained since childhood to recognize as run toward it, not away, which is either the bravest or stupidest piece of civic engineering anyone's ever implemented. Sirens start half a second later. My comm unit lights up with an emergency deployment order before I've even registered the light in the sky. Unclassified fracture. Vault District. Civilian presence confirmed. All available units respond. Vault District means restricted access. It's the one stretch of Duskmere ringed in reinforced containment plating instead of ordinary brick, home to the Accord's deep archives and whatever else the higher ranks decide the public doesn't need to know about. A part of the city I've walked past 100 times and never once had a reason to enter. Fractures aren't supposed to form inside containment plating. That's the entire point of the plating. My pendant is burning against my collarbone by the time I hit the street, hot enough now that I can feel it through my shirt, and some old, cold instinct I thought I'd buried for good is already screaming that this one isn't like the others. I run toward it anyway. Some habits, apparently, you don't get to bury completely. The perimeter checkpoint at the edge of the Vault District is already chaos by the time I reach it. A junior officer waving hunters through without checking registration. Someone shouting coordinates into a comm unit that keeps cutting out. A line of civilian staff herded the wrong direction by somebody who doesn't know the evacuation routes half as well as they think they do. Overhead, the violet light is spreading across the whole quarter of the sky now, bright enough to throw shadows. Somewhere past the checkpoint, I can already hear the high shriek of holokin that haven't finished emerging yet. I redirect 2 of them myself, physically, hands on shoulders, because nobody else has the spare second to notice they're about to walk straight into the collapse zone. Bronze rank response isn't rated for containment breach, the junior officer says, grabbing my arm as I push past. Wait for iron rank backup. There isn't time, I say, and I'm already moving before he can argue further, which is a small, stupid violation of protocol that's going to look a lot smaller by the end of the night, compared to everything else I'm about to do wrong. The fracture over the Vault District isn't a tear so much as a wound, jagged violet light spilling out over the restricted plaza where 36 Accord researchers and support staff are trapped between a collapsed evacuation route and a growing wall of holokin pouring out faster than anything I've ever seen come through a single breach. Whatever's forcing this thing open from the other side isn't behaving like weather. It's behaving like intent. Lyra's already there, arms still splinted, fighting one-handed and swearing every third word, a short blade in her good hand doing the work of 2. Doran's dragging a researcher clear of a support beam that's about to go, gauntlet or no gauntlet. Other response teams are scattered across the plaza in 2s and 3s, holding lines that keep buckling faster than they can be reinforced. I don't see Thren yet. No time to find him. A holokin the size of a delivery cart flips one of the response vehicles like it weighs nothing, and the researcher trapped underneath doesn't have anyone close enough to reach her in time. Nobody except me. There are too many. That's the honest count, the number nobody's going to want to hear in the after-action report. There are simply too many holokin, too many civilians, too little time, and a bronze rank hunter playing at ordinary strength is not going to be enough to keep everyone in that plaza alive. So I stop playing. There's a half second, right before I let go of the leash I've kept on myself for 3 years, where I actually weigh it. Every argument against it is still true. Thren's warning this morning. Corvin Tass cited in front of the whole training yard for exactly this kind of choice. A plaza full of witnesses who walk away tonight with a story that doesn't fit a bronze rank hunter no matter how you round the numbers. None of it outweighs the researcher bleeding out under a support beam 8 feet away from me, and it never has, and some stubborn, unkillable part of me is almost relieved to finally stop pretending otherwise. The Aurelic flame doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It comes up through me like a held breath finally released, gold light running under my skin, along my arms, down the edge of the blade in my hand, and for one unguarded second, I let it be exactly as much as it needs to be, instead of exactly as much as I can get away with. I reach the overturned vehicle before the cart-sized holokin can finish what it started, get a shoulder under the wreckage, and lift it clear, with a strength no bronze rank has any business having. The researcher underneath stares up at me like I've just rewritten a law of physics in front of her, which, in a sense, I have. Can you walk? I ask her. Yes, I think so. She's staring at my hands like she's trying to find the trick in them. How did you? Later. Go. I point her toward the evacuation line, and don't wait to see if she listens, because the cart-sized holokin hasn't given up so much as reset, and it's not the only thing converging on this stretch of plaza anymore. Off to my left, through the smoke, I catch a flash of an aurum rank sigil, and Thren's unmistakable silhouette cutting down 2 holokin in the same motion I've only ever seen from hunters who've spent years earning the right to move that efficiently. He's good. He's very good. He's also, for one crucial stretch of minutes, too busy holding his own line to notice what's happening on mine, and I use every second of that window like it's borrowed time, because it is. Doran goes down hard near the evacuation route, tackled sideways by something low and fast that I don't get a good look at before I'm already moving. For one full second that stretches longer than it has any right to, I genuinely don't know if I'm going to reach him in time. I do. Barely. I put the creature down before its jaws finish closing, and Doran stares up at me from the ground, with an expression I can't afford to read properly, gauntlets still clenched uselessly in one fist. You're welcome, I tell him, hauling him up by the collar. And don't wait around for whatever he's about to say back. I move through the holokin line like something that used to have a very different name. 3 down in the time it takes most hunters to draw a second breath. A 4th thrown clear of a group of researchers with enough force that it doesn't get back up. I catch a support beam an instant before it crushes 2 civilians and hurl it aside like it weighs nothing. Because right now, to me, it doesn't. Then the pattern changes. They stop coming at the hunters. All of them at once, like something behind that seam gave an order, and the whole front of the swarm turns and starts moving on the evacuation route instead, where 3 dozen unarmed people are still funneling through a gap 2 at a time. I get there first, barely. I put myself in the mouth of that gap and hold it, and for maybe 40 seconds the only thing standing between the Vault District's entire research staff and the inside of something's throat is one bronze rank hunter who is very obviously not one. Behind me, somebody starts counting people through out loud. I can hear the numbers climbing. I keep my eyes forward and let them climb. Lyra's line buckles next, one of the larger holokin bearing down on her, while her bad arm slows her half a beat too much, and I cross the plaza faster than the eye should be able to track, putting myself between her and the strike that would have ended her night for good. She looks at me. Really looks. The way you look at something that's just stopped making sense. And there's no explaining it in the middle of this, so I don't try. Fall back to the evacuation line, I tell her instead. I've got this side. Kaldris, what? Later. Trust me on this one. One of the smaller holokin breaks from the pack entirely, ignoring 3 closer, easier targets to come straight at me instead. It isn't until it's almost on top of me that I realize what it's actually reaching for. Not my blade arm, not my throat, my chest, my collarbone, the pendant, like something in it can smell the thing hanging there and wants it badly enough to die trying. I put it down before it gets close enough to find out what would have happened if it succeeded. There's no room to sit with how much that scares me, so I shove it down with everything else and keep moving. Somewhere behind me, I hear Doran say my name, like it's a question he's afraid of the answer to. The fracture pulses wider instead of narrowing, and for one bad second, I think it's about to finish tearing open entirely. Vault District containment isn't built to survive a full breach, and if this thing goes all the way, half of Duskmir's most sensitive accord holdings go with it. Then it steadies, holds, spits out one final wave of holokin like it's clearing its throat, and I don't have the luxury of wondering why. I don't stop to explain. I cut through the last wave standing between the plaza and the collapsed evacuation route, clear a path, and pull the final trapped researcher free with seconds to spare before the passage folds in on itself behind us. By the time the response teams flood the plaza and the remaining holokin scatter or die, the gold under my skin has already dimmed back down, banked, hidden. Too late, and I know it's too late, because a plaza full of witnesses just watched a registered bronze rank hunter do something no bronze rank hunter has ever done. My head is pounding. There's a thin, warm line of blood under my nose that I wipe away before anyone can see it. The cost of tonight is coming due, quietly, the way it always does. Around me, the plaza's shifting from battlefield to disaster site in real time. Medics threading through the rubble. Researchers counted off against a manifest by a harried accord clerk. The last of the holokin fragments dissolving into ash without any glyphs rising out of them this time. Thank whatever's still listening for small mercies. The overturned response vehicle I lifted sits crumpled against a support pillar, and more than one person is looking at it, then at me, then back at it, doing math that doesn't add up. I catch the researcher I pulled clear, watching me from the edge of the medic line, and she doesn't look away when I notice. She just keeps staring, like she's trying to decide whether to say something, and I really hope she decides against it. The dust hasn't even finished settling when I hear the resonance meter before I see it. That particular high, shrieking whine a handheld unit makes when it's reading something so far past its calibrated ceiling that the device itself doesn't have a number for it. Castellan Thren steps out of the smoke like he's been waiting for exactly this moment his entire career. Meter raised, eyes locked on me, the needle behind the glass pinned so hard against its upper limit it looks like it might crack the housing. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't have to. His face says it for him. Not confusion, not disbelief, just the cold, total certainty of a man who has finally found the answer to a question he's been quietly asking for months, standing in the middle of a ruined plaza, staring straight at me. Behind him, Lyra's gone very still, splinted arm forgotten, looking at me like she's rebuilding the last few minutes from scratch in her head. Doran's just staring, gauntlet hanging forgotten from one hand, mouth open around a question he hasn't found the shape of yet. Neither of them says a word. Neither of them has to. 3 years. 3 years of bootlaces and pulled strikes and a resonance meter that always read exactly what I needed it to. And it comes apart in the space of one plaza, one night, one decision I'd make again in a heartbeat and still can't quite believe I actually made. Somewhere underneath the dread there's something that feels almost like relief, and I don't trust that feeling even a little. The plaza is full of dust and sirens and 30-some witnesses who are all going to tell this story differently tonight, and every single version of it ends the same way, with a bronze rank hunter who was never supposed to be able to do any of that, standing very still in the wreckage, while the one man in Duskmir whose entire job is finding people like me finally has the proof he's been hunting for. Thren lowers the meter an inch, just enough that the shrieking whine drops to something almost bearable, and opens his mouth to say the first word of whatever comes next. I don't get to hear it. Smash that like button if you'd have run into, and stick around, because Thren's about to find out exactly how big of a mistake that was.